And it was capture of a kind, but it was never what they think. They all forget I had a choice, you know. I could have chosen not to eat or drink.
The Dark Wife by Sarah Deemer is one of the finest lesbian romance stories I've read. It's a young adult retelling of the Greek myths surrounding Persephone and Hades, holding Hades as a beautiful woman and Persephone as her more than willing suitor. The story is told from Persephone's perspective. In Greek myth, the beautiful Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, as well as Zeus, god of the sky and king of the gods. Hades is Zeus's brother, the god of the underworld and ruler of the dead. The underworld isn't hell so much as just a gloomy afterlife, populated by shades who have nothing interesting to do, just wandering around. Meh. However, there is also a dark abyss called Tartarus that does serve a similar function to hell. There are also the Elysium Fields that serve as a heaven-like reward to heroes, where they can get instant wheat without any work and basically enjoy an aristocratic existence. But the fields aren't in the underworld so much as special islands on Earth, called the Fortunate Isles. As the story goes, Hades saw the beautiful Persephone enjoying nature and fell in love with her. Knowing Demeter would not consent to a union, he conspired with Zeus to abduct her into the underworld, where he married her against her will. In her grief, Demeter abandoned her duty of keeping the plants alive and caused winter throughout the entire world. The other gods ordered Hades to return Persephone, and he agreed. However, Persephone consumed 6 pomegranate seeds while she was down there, and that bound her to the underworld. For 6 months out of the year, she is forced to return to the underworld and serve as Queen of the Dead. This is the just so explanation for the changing seasons. To the polytheistic Greeks, the gods were like kings and queens, each powerful and having varying levels of dangerous potential. The scariest gods were Poseidon, god of the treacherous Mediterranean Sea, and Ares, god of war. Hades and Zeus didn't like each other and both were dangerous, but they were regarded as two sides in a cycle. Christianization has distorted Western perception of Zeus and Hades into God and Satan. The 1934 Disney cartoon The Goddess of Spring, depicting the Hades and Persephone story, literally turns Hades into Satan. Most of the time, Americans can't help but view Hades through that lens, even when researching Greek mythology. Such is the power of the Christianized story. These stories are fundamentally mutable. The Dark Wife is just one of many evolutions of the story. This time to promote lesbians is awesome.
Lesbian, gay-type lovers.
The story starts with Persephone as an innocent girl who likes walking through her mother's garden, a protected forest area, and making friends with its inhabitants. She falls in love with a nymph, and she has sex for the first time. What I think is fairly remarkable is that this is all presented as Persephone's innocence. She's just a girl in love, and we can appreciate that sweet love without the lesbian or sex aspects being seen as disruptive to that innocence. What is disruptive is Zeus, the world's biggest rapist, coming in and raping her lover. Yeah, while Zeus is nowadays associated with God, or is just the most virtuous pagan god opposing pagan Satan, the ancient Greeks saw him as like a king who kept the world's natural forces in check, but who was prone to destructive urges just like any mortal king. This includes having sex with anything that moves. The ancient Greeks didn't make a big distinction between consensual sex and rape, so when it's viewed through a modern American lens, his sexual exploits can easily come across as monstrous. The Dark Wife spins this by making Zeus an evil, lecherous rapist, and just a power-hungry dictator oppressing the gods. Zeus's desire to dominate all of the women he can find is presented from the feminine perspective. He's the main villain, a man that women run from and try to protect other women from. Demeter tried to protect Persephone from him, but she's becoming of age and she can't any longer. Zeus knows about her and wants to have sex with her, as he has with all of the other female gods. Zeus, of course, is Persephone's father, and that incestuous desire is appropriately portrayed as monstrous. He rapes the nymph and punishes Persephone for crying out in horror by turning the nymph into a rose bush, which pretty much removes any chance at all of a relationship. Not quite clear if this counts as killing her or not. I don't know. This is more or less a woman in a refrigerator, but I don't think it has the negative value of a standard instance of this trope. Usually a woman in a refrigerator is when a female character is killed off to make a male character storyline more interesting. Typically there is already a significant lack of female characters, so this use diminishes the already small female presence, so it becomes all about male pathos. Because The Dark Wife is a lesbian narrative with plenty of active present female characters, it's not the same issue. It's not any more anti-feminist than a male death in a typical male-centric narrative. This portrayal of Zeus as an evil male rapist trashing the lives of women is actually pretty awesome. It shows the influence of feminism on the American framework. The ancient Greeks were very patriarchal, and they depicted Zeus's exploits rather neutrally. And modern patriarchal stories tend to either write out or depict Zeus's misogynistic actions as justified in some way, and therefore not misogynistic, keeping Zeus as a good guy. The Dark Wife takes all the crap that he does and looks at it critically from a feminist perspective. It's actually not all that radical of a perspective, and it shouldn't be. It reminds me of the sarcastic statement that feminism is the radical belief that women are people. The Dark Wife treats the women that Zeus victimizes as people, and it hates Zeus because of that. Of course, the mere depiction of an evil rapist man as the villain in a lesbian narrative has led some entitled male readers to conclude that the book has an anti-male agenda. Not every story has to be about loving men, especially stories written about women loving women. And it's not even the case that all men are depicted as evil, just Zeus. Hermes, god of travelers, chances Zeus's wrath to help Persephone.
Fabulous party. I haven't seen this much love in a room since Narcissus discovered himself.
Persephone goes to a big party of the gods and makes friends with Hermes, as well as Hades, who she is surprised to see as an attractive woman, albeit with solid black eyes. Apparently the idea that Hades is a man was a malicious rumor Zeus started in reference to Hades' preference for the female sex. Zeus isn't just a cruel dictator and rapist, he's incredibly petty, also inconsistent. Athena is shown to have a preference for the female sex, but Zeus doesn't make up rumors about her. I've waffled back and forth as to whether or not this move was transphobic on the part of the author, but I've decided it's not, because it ultimately boils down to portraying Zeus badly because he doesn't respect Hades' gender. Hades and Hermes conspire to rescue Persephone from Zeus. Unlike the abduction in the myth, Persephone makes the conscious choice to follow Hermes into the underworld. In a clear subversion of the themes of the original, Persephone's free will is emphasized. As a memento of the world above, she grabs a pomegranate on the way down. Hermes gives her a coin to pay Charon to ferry her across the river Styx into Hades' kingdom. There she joins Hades and meets her assistant Pallas, the dead former consort of the goddess Athena, eternally pining after her. Persephone and Hades can't bear to tell her that Athena has moved on. In the original myth, Pallas was Athena's stepsister, but this incestuous element is written away to make it only a story about estranged lovers. A good chunk of the story is Hades and Pallas showing Persephone around the underworld, while Persephone and Hades fall for each other and Pallas cheers them on like a fangirl shipper. The romance is really sweet and lovely, with Hades giving Persephone a puppy Cerberus and just being the cutest couple ever. At the same time, there's a conspiracy where Zeus is trying to take control of the underworld away from Hades, so that he can rule the world.
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Dark Wife has it that the main chamber of the underworld was only intended for Hades' palace, not for all the people who ever died. The Elysium Fields, here presented as an alternate dimension in the underworld, were supposed to be a paradise for everyone, but Zeus stole it away so that he could reward all the mortals that he made kill and rape for him. And they ultimately just end up ignoring the paradise as they sit recounting their sins for eternity. Zeus brought Charon over to his side and sends him out to the dead to persuade them to rise up in revolt and throw Hades into the river Styx, where she would presumably never be able to emerge. But Persephone gets through to their leader and takes the dead into the Elysium Fields to show them what Zeus did. The spirit of revolution dies at once, and then healing starts when the dead victims of the heroes find their victimizers and forgive them. The heroes are able to break out of their depressions, and all of the dead people spread out and enjoy the Elysium Fields as they were always supposed to. Finally, Hades kills Charon, ending Zeus's attempt to overthrow her kingdom. I'm not a huge fan of the forgiveness part. It feels a little too much like the tendency for media to focus on rapists' feelings and insisting that rape victims forgive and forget, like it's just a minor infraction. The private practice rape storyline ended with Charlotte forgiving her rapist to his face, and after sweeps she basically got over it. In this case, it was all Zeus's fault, because he held so much power over these men's lives and essentially killed and raped through them, leaving the men victimized as well. But Zeus isn't focused on as the real perpetrator, even though it would have been very easy to do so. It's all just about forgiving the men. Everyone likes a happy ending, but this seems like a perpetuation of rape culture. In response to Hades taking Persephone, Zeus forces Demeter to create a winter to kill everything that Persephone loves. That way, Persephone will come to him. He also spreads another malicious rumor that Hades, a man, kidnapped Persephone to rape her. Yes, we can all blame Zeus for everything. Persephone knows that she must return to stop the winter, but first she proposes to Hades, and Pallas officiates their marriage. The pomegranate is then used in the wedding ceremony, where both of them eat it. And that's it. There's no trick to it. It's just a love symbol. Persephone returns to Earth, Demeter stops the winter, Zeus moves to rape Persephone, but she controls the surrounding plant life and they slice him up with poison thorns. Zeus promises revenge, and he goes into the underworld to kill Hades. The dead come to her rescue and overpower Zeus and throw him into Tartarus. Gaia, goddess of the earth, seals Tartarus to make sure that he never escapes. The palace atop Olympus crumbles. The age of Zeus is over. After an immortals' war only briefly referenced, Hermes and Persephone take over Charon's job and ferry souls across the river, each taking a 6-month shift. Now in modern day, the underworld is accessed through the New York City subway tunnels, and Persephone is still at work. Cerberus is a big friendly dog, and not a scary guard dog at all. The only reason that he's at the entrance is because he's eager to see Persephone. She's married to Hades, and they're happy. The end. It's a comfortable ending, but I'm not sure it's the best ending. It doesn't fit with the tone of the rest of the book, which promises a bittersweet story, and it leaves a lot of questions unanswered. The book is about an untold story because Zeus twisted everything around, but if Zeus is ultimately taken out of power, there's no reason for this to be an untold story. Why not just tell the mortals what's really going on after Zeus is taken out of power? Why not have Hades make public appearances so that they can see that she's a woman? Exactly what was this immortals' war that left Persephone happily ferrying souls, but Demeter causing winter and the world left with Zeus's malicious lies? I feel like the author sacrificed the integrity of the story to make sure that the book ended on a happy note. While browsing her Twitter account, I noticed the author tweeted, "Young adult literature needs more lesbian heroes. Lesbians getting good endings rather than realistic tragic ones. Lesbian teens deserve good books." While I like the general sentiment, if she applied that thinking to The Dark Wife and giving it a happy ending, it was to the detriment of the story. It's kind of like a Lego character with the head switched out for something that clearly doesn't belong with its body. I'm sure that there could be a happier story that fits with the ending, but this is not the story we get. If I was to rewrite it, I would have Hades hold something over Zeus's head to keep him from pursuing Persephone or raping anyone else without completely taking him out of power. Maybe she could threaten to have her kingdom of the dead leave the underworld as ghosts and invade mortal cities in order to switch worship of Zeus over to worship of Hades. Maybe a significant part of his power comes from mortals' worship, like in Black and White. Now that Persephone has shown the dead the Elysium Fields, Hades has their respect, so Persephone could still have an active contribution to the ending, even if Hades ultimately just threatens him. Maybe the pomegranate seeds did bind Persephone to the underworld, but this was something that she freely chose in order to see her wife 6 months out of the year. Zeus could throw a little temper tantrum and make Demeter cause a winter for these 6 months, and he could tell his lies, but ultimately Persephone's and Hades would find happiness. I also wouldn't have the Percy Jackson-style sequence in the subway. The time skip just leaves too many questions unanswered. And I think the story works best in a time when people actually worship the Greek gods and tell campfire stories about them. Anyway, I don't want to criticize the book too much. It's not a bad ending per se, just one that doesn't quite fit with the tone of the rest of the book. Overall, the book is very compelling. Persephone's voice is strong, and she really feels like a young goddess with a different mindset than a human. The romance with Hades is just the sweetest thing ever. And I like that Persephone's and Hades could be friends with Pallas without there being some kind of cliché love triangle. Finally, the feminist take on the misogynistic Greek myth is a breath of fresh air. If this sounds at all appealing, I do recommend checking it out.
So now you know the reason why there's a winter season.